Welcome to today's Get Hired workshops from GI Jobs. Today we are going to be joined by some very special guests who have led the charge and spearheaded a ton of programs and a ton of awesome initiatives through their military-friendly efforts in the space to help bring you some of the most awesome career opportunities with some of the greatest companies out there. So really excited to talk to these guys today and to get to know the programs a little bit better and to get some insight on what these organizations are doing that helps them stand out from the others, and also to pick their brain to get a little bit more information about some of those questions you guys have been dying to know about. So really, really excited. Don't forget to get registered for the Career Fair event, which is happening on December 8th from 12 to 4. And you can go ahead and get registered at www.gijobs.com/expo. So you want to make sure that you get registered and you upload your resume. Lots of our employers that join us go through those resumes prior to the event and select candidates or potential candidates in which they want to have conversations with. So really exciting stuff there. And just also as a reminder, if you stick around, you'll be entered in to win a $100 gift card. So today's guest that will be joining us are William from Combined Insurance. Worked with William for many years, and he has really, really, really been a change maker in the space, spearheading his program. You know, he's been with Combined Insurance for quite some time now, I think since 2017. And, you know, he is their director of their recruiting and manages their military programs. He's responsible for attracting, hiring, retaining, and building sustainable support programs for veterans, military spouses, and the military community. William is passionate about helping veterans and military spouses transition in the civilian workforce and find meaningful and rewarding careers. He was recognized in 2021 for being the Veteran Champion of the Year in corporate America. So hats off to you, William. Thank you for all that you do, and excited to have a conversation today.
Thank you, Taylor.
No problem. And then also Michael will be joining us. Michael is from Premise Health. He is the military outreach and program lead for Premise Health. Premise is one of the largest, actually, direct healthcare providers in the Fortune 1000s and other large employers across the U.S. Michael served 10 years in the Tennessee National Army Guard and is currently an armored company commander with the 278th ACR. Prior to joining Premise Health, he led military I'm so sorry, I cannot speak today. But prior to joining Premise Health, he led military programs and was part of the leadership team for a regional nonprofit that supported veterans and their families. He's led corporate outreach and engagement and has been very helpful and informative to companies and other veteran outreach organizations. So Michael, thank you for all that you do, and so excited to have you join us today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
And then our third panelist, who is David Best, unfortunately can't join us today. He's a little under the weather. So we send him lots and lots of warm wishes and positive energy for a speedy recovery. And, you know, he can join us next time. Right now, let him focus on getting better. All right, guys. So lots of questions and lots of things to ask you today. But first and foremost, I want to start off with kind of understanding a little bit more about what you guys feel sets companies apart when they're talking about military programs, right? And being military friendly. So if you could, let's go with Michael. Michael, if you could tell me a little bit more about what is it that makes a military friendly program and why are employers military friendly? What are some of the things that they do that sets them apart?
Yeah, great question. You know, I know that you guys run the military friendly program. One of the big things that we've used in the space for a long time is military ready as well. So being ready to bring those service members in, whether they're direct transition or they've been out of the service for a couple of decades, or they're still serving in the reserve component of either the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and being able to have programs and organizations in place internally that understand what they're looking for. Can kind of have some type of ERG or something like that engages them in the initial stages of whether it's recruiting or upon joining the organization, and really having that mechanism that says, hey, I know kind of what you've experienced and know what your struggles and trials and tribulations are that you're going through right now, and being able to put a name to a face to somebody that you can reach out to and solve problems.
That is so important. Like having that central point of contact that you can say, hey, have you reached out to so-and-so? And having that BRG, ERG network. So for those that, may not be familiar with what a BRG, ERG is, some larger corporations do have groups of individuals within their organization that raise their hand and say, hey, I've experienced that. I'm a part of that group, or I want to help that group. Where can I fit in? What can I do to help? And, there's lots of tools and things and programs and benefits that the ERGs provide. William, you've got a pretty strong veteran network within your organization. What are some of the things that military-friendly companies, ERG, BRGs do? Like what can they do to help?
Yeah, so basically, what as combined insurance, what sets us apart, from other organizations that may not be military, friendly employer, is our culture, as well as the holistic approach that we take with, attracting, hiring, and retaining our veterans. And also, sort of the welcoming culture goes into that employee resource group as well. So we have our own military resource group called Salute. So we include military veterans, reservists, National Guard, military spouses, military family members, as well as supporters of the military. So it's really an all-inclusive, ERG group, basically. And they sort of, they're there to really just back and network, together for camaraderie and to bring, share ideas and really just put all of our heads together instead of one person just trying to, operate and sort of run the VRG. It's great to have that camaraderie with, like-minded people and military veterans and military spouses that, have ideas as well.
Absolutely. And, it's funny because when you look at a lot of military-friendly organizations and some of the things that they spearhead, they do have these internal BRG, ERGs that are there to support the organization that they represent. But a big part of that is networking, right? So when you're engaging with these ERG, BR vendors, keep in mind, even though if at the time you're not a good fit for that organization, or maybe they don't have a position open, there is networking opportunity there. And there may be someone within their network, like, William, for example, the Chicago Club, right, that you guys partner with, and you've got that consortium and network of other employers where your information can kind of be passed. So important to do your research when you're looking at companies, and to look to see if they offer those BRG, ERGs, and find out who the contacts are. You can go on LinkedIn. There's groups such as the Veteran Mentor Network on LinkedIn, which has a lot of ERG, BRG members in it. And, just kind of do a little bit of digging and, just reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask and say, hey, I've got a question. Can you help me? Or can you help me, right? Help me help myself, so that I can get the knowledge I need to be successful, and to help network. So always reach out, and in preparing for, attending virtual career fairs or in-person career fairs, it's really important to have, your resume ready, right? And to kind of know what positions are available and a little bit about the organizations and their culture. So when you guys attend career fairs, what are some of the benefits to individuals uploading their resumes ahead of time? Like what have you guys seen? Michael, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so the pre-read is super important. You can make sure a lot of platforms have the ability to send invites internally of like, hey, we already looked at your resume, would love to have a conversation with you. As you work through the booths, make sure and please stop by ours. That's a big helpful factor for us. Also, not always, kind of going back to that ERG space, not all our booth attendees are not always recruiters. So I have individuals from different parts of the organization that are ERG members, whether it's a military group or whatnot, that we're at the career fair for, and say, hey, take a look at these resumes. This is who's going to be here. Do you want to network with them? Do you want to build this pipeline? I know you don't have an opening right now. It's December. Budgets are being reviewed. There's a possibility you could have a net new position after the first of the year, and having that pre-built pipeline will be super helpful because it reduces how long it takes you and the candidate to go through the process. And those pre-reads and talking to candidates and inviting them in and having an understanding of what they're looking for and what you're looking for really makes the process smooth.
Absolutely. 100%. And on the conversation of like resumes and stuff, let's get into like some of the best practices, right? everybody's got an opinion on how long a resume should be, what should be in there, and all of these things. But truly, some organizations will use resume scrubbers, right? Or AI bots or different types of tools that they use to kind of scrub out some of the resumes. What kind of advice can you give to our audience to give them some insight on how to kind of get around some of those bots, or maybe suggestions on keywords to include, or just some general, best practices that can really help them cross that finish line? William?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when it comes to the resume itself, I definitely recommend keeping it short and sweet. I've seen a lot of transitioning military veterans. They sort of want to include, every single job they've done. And I've received, 3, 4, even 5-page resumes before. So definitely keep it short and sweet to 2 pages, avoid that long resume. And, as far as the scrubbers go and keywords, I definitely recommend, especially for those companies that may be using those keyword indicators, to obviously associate that with your skills, but see how you can relate to, the job description that's being posted, and using some of those keywords that associate with that job description.
So you mean just pulling the keywords right off of the job description that you're applying for? Like just kind of look through there if it says.
Yeah, if they relate to you, definitely, like, not just pull every single word that you see on the job description, but if you feel like that relates to you, or you have experience within, one of those bullet points that you see on the job description, definitely utilize those.
Awesome advice.
I'd love to say something. Yeah, no, jump in here for a second. One thing that I would say too is people tend to just copy and paste what they did, their previous job description, into their resume. What I'm looking for is replicable outcomes at my positions. So you were a successful software developer, you were a successful logistician. What actions did you do every day that made you successful that you can repeat at my company and be successful for me? That is where I look for in the resume of, like, hey, communicator, I communicated effectively to do this task to achieve these results. And some people talk about the STAR method, talking about and using those keywords as, hey, I'm writing a sentence based on this pure keyword. Going back to our OER, NCOER days in the military, you had character, you had drive, determination, gets results, these things that you had to write your bullet points around in the military. And you say, hey, I can do that in the civilian world too. Hey, I can get results, and break it down even further, gets results in XYZ. Are you getting results in communication? Are you getting results in, KPIs, whatever those KPIs are, and talk about what actions you're doing, not necessarily what does your job require you to do. That's sort of right. What are you contributing to the process? What is your role? How are you the influencer maker?
Great point. Yeah, and on the subject of best practices, let's talk a little bit about some of the things to avoid, right? Like mass sending out your resume to recruiters on LinkedIn and asking, where do I fit? Right. So what are some of the things that you guys would suggest that our audience totally avoids when looking at the job search and application process?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, definitely keeping that resume to 2 pages is, very important, because anything longer than that, I feel like the hiring managers, sort of get lost, when they're continuously reading. So they only have such a short period of time to, review that resume, that just keep it
like
short.
15 seconds,
also,
right? Most
yeah.
recruiters, the average is like 15 seconds.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, exactly. And then, basically the translating, the biggest mistake for transitioning, veterans out of the military is really just translating your skills and that military experience that you had, and translating that into civilian terms, because it's not all recruiters are HR professionals are military veterans. So they don't really understand, some of, the experiences or MOSs, and also the jargon, used, or acronyms. Definitely try to stay away from those as well, because in civilian terms, I mean, those HR professionals will not understand those, jargon.
Absolutely.
Being used.
A good tool our audience can leverage is ONET too, right? So if you put your MOS code into ONET, it's going to spit out what the civilian equivalency is, because a lot of the recruiters looking at resumes, just, I mean, they're unfamiliar with it, right? They just don't know their MOS code. What is that? And if you put your actual MOS title, they may not understand what the correlation is between the job you're applying for and the title of your MOS. So, Michael, what are some of the mistakes or things to avoid that, you know, in your opinion?
Yeah, obviously length. Will's hit on that. I think my record is like 27 pages. It was literally everything they've done in the
27.
military. 27.
No
And it
way.
had, yeah, it was great. It was wild. And it had all
They
their
should have been hired
PII.
for thoroughness.
Oh yeah, no, it was they just printed out their entire personnel record and just like copied it together as a PDF and were just blasting that out. And I was like, I need to talk to you. This is not what you want to do here. So, you know, make sure that what you're sending is relevant. You know, one of the big things that I personally, you know, I'm a stickler for details is you send me a resume that has another company. Hey, such and such company, I'm really excited about your position, and it's not my company. And, you know, just making sure that you take a little extra time and look at that, and it's tied to what you're actually applying for. I'm not a big spray and pray kind of guy on posting resumes to every job that you see that's open. You know, at a certain point, you're going to run out of jobs that you're kind of looking at that you think you fit. And so then you start applying north and south of there. So you apply for everything from janitor to CEO. And then the company looks at you and you're like, Michael has no idea what he wants to do. He applied for project manager, CEO, janitor, you know, IT development, IT this, all this other stuff. And you're like, Michael doesn't know what he wants to do. So how do I pick what Michael wants to do? You know, is it worth a conversation based on the resume? Did you place the same resume into the system, you know, 15 times, or did you post 15 different resumes for each job? And, you know, those types of things really help me see who really wants to stand out, because I have people that are regular repeat appliers that they've applied for 50 roles, but they're 50 different roles and not in the same vertical. You know, if you apply to 50 roles in the same vertical that are plus or minus one level, that's different. But if you apply to 50 different roles that are in 50 different departments and 50 different job levels, you're not standing out in a good way. And I would say, you know, pick a vertical, pick a role, plus or minus one level, and try and stay in that sweet spot.
Great advice. Yeah, there's a lot of AI bots too built into the systems that companies use. And when you apply, like you said, Michael, outside of your scope and beyond one or two levels, you're out, like before a recruiter can even see your resume, right? So you want to make sure that you are clean and concise with what you want to do. And then two, on the resume part, you know, when you're applying for civilian organizations and things like that, it's good to keep the resume short and simple. Recruiters, you know, on average 15 seconds, right? But for some of the GSA roles, you may need a full and complete resume. So just keep that in mind. If you have it already created, shorten it up, sum it up, and use that for your, you know, when you're applying to companies. But for some of your GS positions that you're applying for, you know, you do need that whole 18, 27 page super long
full
resume.
synopsis. You know, one thing that I've seen people, and I've coached people on to do is create like a master copy and break it down by key skill. So if communications is a key skill that you have, list out 15 or 20 different bullet points that talk about different experiences that you have around communication, around team building, around training, around development, and keep that as like a master template so that when you're looking at a job and you know, you need to pull in a different bullet point that's kind of talks about it in a different way or in a different kind of scenario, you don't have to just keep recreating that. It's, you know, if you go back again to the OER, NCOR days and you Google like Army Writer, and there's a website of bullet points for, you know, courage or, you know, duty or teamwork, those types of things. This is your own personal repository of key accomplishments. Plus, it kind of keeps you a timeline. You can update it. You can use it on your LinkedIn. I've seen people kind of keep their repository on LinkedIn under different jobs or just on a Word doc on their computer. That's easy.
Absolutely. And, you know, when it comes to the application process, right? Certain companies will use indicators, right? Whether it's the keyword will pick up military on a resume or veteran on a resume, or what happens more often is the self-ID box, right? So having to check that box, it says, you know, I did serve. That's really going to take you to the next level, get you engaged with the ERGBRG if those companies are using that method. So can you guys give a little advice to our audience on why it's important to self-ID, or why it's important to check that box, and what it means, and why, some people look at that. I mean, you get all these questions about disabilities and everything else. And you look at, why do you need to know this information? Like, is this gonna hurt my job outcome? Is it not? Who gets to see this information? Just talk a little bit about why it's important to kind of check the box. Michael?
Yeah, self-identification, yeah. Yes. So self-identification, is important to us at Combine because, we value, wanting to hire military veterans and military spouses. So for us, it's just a huge positive, and we want to know, who you are. And then on the other front, we're bringing up the employee resource group. That's sort of, it's important in not only just the recruiting process that we know that you're a military veteran or military spouse, but we also know how we can support you. And, once you're hired, we want to invite you to that employee resource group, so we can basically, mentor you, provide professional development tips, get involved in the local community through community outreach and volunteer opportunities in your local areas, and hopefully connect with others that are in your area to build that camaraderie with other military veterans and military spouses.
Absolutely. Yeah, that checking that box is really the trigger for a lot of companies to say, let's get this person connected with one of our internal mentors, or someone to try and see what we can do to help get them through the job application process, and to help get out of the auto scrubber world, right? The 15 emails, we've reviewed your resume, but kind of responses. And so on that note, let's talk about something that, is a little more sensitive, right? When it comes to Guard and Reserve, right? Why, that there is apprehension there to self-ID, because they're going to say, well, what if I do that? Is there going to be issues with, the time that I have to leave to go serve, right? Is the employer going to look at that negatively? Is it going to impact employment? While, checking the box that you're a veteran is important as well, right? But I think having the active status is that you will have to take time off for other responsibilities, or even being a military spouse, right? You may have to PCS in 2 years. So can you give us, some advice in that area, Michael?
Yeah, so I actually was talking to somebody yesterday about this. I'm a member of an HR forum, and they asked about it, and I honestly wrote more words than the little program would let me, and so I had to send her an email and be like, I tried to get it all in there, I couldn't do it. So honesty is the best policy.
So you had a 27-page response.
I did. It was detailed. I broke it down by rank and how much you're going to make in a drill weekend. She was like, so, but no, you gotta lead with honesty, and you don't want to. And so I'm a company commander in the National Guard right now. So I have 72 soldiers, and I try to send letters to each of my soldiers' employers. I thank them. I give them a drill schedule. I let them know what's going on, because I don't want my soldiers to forget that drills is coming, or that they don't have a point of contact. And so, maybe they're like, well, this soldier said he's leaving for drill for the last 3 weeks, and it's May, and I know that you guys normally do annual training in, June. What's the deal? Oh, well, it actually got moved up. This soldier's at a school. He's not going to go to that June annual training. He's going to this May annual training. And that's why there's a discrepancy in those normal timelines. So that has that point of comfort for them. So lead with honesty. You're gonna be activated. You're gonna be going to schools. You're gonna go to different things. The Guard has transitioned from the lower op tempo pre 9/11 of 60 training days a year, which was truly a Saturday, Sunday, once a month, and 2 weeks in the summer. It's closer to the 90 to 100 plus days, depending on the type of unit that you're in. That is a couple of Thursday, Fridays every month. That is a 3 to 4 week AT in the summer. So having some honesty there, you get some different pieces and some different engagement in your civilian role, but you can also say, hey, I bring these additional skills. I'm constantly being trained on how to be a better leader, how to be a better communicator, how to be a better person. And I can bring that to your organization without you spending $1 on training me. I bring that every month back with me. And then also you gotta, on the flip side of that, not be super hua G.I. Joe guy that comes in and yells at people and knife hands people, because that definitely will turn people off. You got to be humble. You got to be that servant leader. You got to be that quiet professional, and those things kind of you can help stand out. But honesty is always the best policy when you're in the Guard or the reserves. You lead with that, let them know, and you try to get it as early in the conversation. It is against the law for them to discriminate against you because you're in the Guard or the reserves under USERRA. So if that you feel like that's the case, you can report that to an ombudsman, which that's a
Who
fun
do they
word
report
to say.
to?
So you
Where would
report
they
it to USERRA. You go to the USERRA website. There is ESGR, which is Employer Supported Guard and Reserve. They have programs there that say, hey, I feel like I have a USERRA violation. You give them that information and say, hey, this is kind of what it looks like, and they'll investigate, or they'll say, hey, no, they're fully in their right to do whatever XYZ that happened. But generally speaking, you do have a lot more rights than you probably think of. For example, if you left for active duty, you decided to enlist right off the street, you leave your company, you go, you do a 4-year tour, you come back, you're protected by USERRA because it's in the 5-year window. You are guaranteed to get your job back at the same or higher level. So, if you did that, which that is a super wild example, but stuff like that, you're protected. And you're protected up to a certain period after you get out of the military, after you return from a deployment, while still in the Guard and Reserves, while still in IRR. So there's a lot of factors there. Understanding your rights under USERRA is very important as a service member, but also you don't want to kind of like be a blue falcon to your employer and not keep them in the loop.
Absolutely. When it comes to military friendly, that is one of the markers that we look for, right? So when it comes to being a military friendly employer, it's important that your organization is going above and beyond USERRA, right? So there's that 5-year protection window, but is that consecutive, right? How does that look? How many days do you get? How is that tracked within the system? So those are all things that military friendly itself looks at as a metric. And about 98% of the employers have those programs in place that exceed the USERRA standards. So that's exciting to see. And they've got a lot of good programs in place. And when let's talk about military spouses too, right? Same aspect. Should you include that? Should you not? And how could that, are employers going to look at that and say, hey, we're not going to hire her or me, right? So let's say I did it. Not going to hire her because she's going to leave in 2 years, right? There's always some little bit of fear there, when it comes to that. Do I tout or do I not? And there's no box, right? For some companies, there's no box to check, under self-ID. So William, can you tell us a little bit more about support services for spouses, how they go about self-IDing? What are some of the benefits, best way to do it, best practices, do's and don'ts?
Sure, absolutely. So I think now more than ever, employers really want to hire military spouses, just because of, the new world of a lot of remote opportunities opening up. So I think you should definitely let them know, if there is no box, like you just mentioned on the resume or on the actual application itself, let them know through your resume that you are a military spouse. You should never have to worry about telling a potential recruiter or employer that you are a military spouse. Instead, you should be proud of that and let them know that you are, because of, the unique skills, the skill sets that military spouses have, and a lot of strengths that they bring to the table, that they're going to bring that into your organization. So you really want to, hire a military spouse and bring them into your organization.
Absolutely. And on that note, how do we talk about the gaps, right? So like there's a time gap, or, you weren't working because of PCS, or maybe a kid or anything like that. Maybe there were circumstances that came up where you do have those resume gaps. What do we do, right? Do we list them? Do we not? What do we put in there?
I mean, obviously, as a military spouse friendly employer as well, we know that military spouses, just from experience, that's normal for a military spouse to PCS or move a couple of times with their significant other, that's on active duty. So we identify those gaps, and if you are a military spouse, just let the interviewer know, or that hiring manager, and explain yourself and let them know sort of why those gaps are there, so that they know sort of why those gaps are there and why you were moving around.
I agree.
That's
Honesty. Don't try and bait and switch people.
just be transparent. Also, too, keep in mind, you can list other things that you've done, right? So if you've volunteered at all, any of the skills that you've gained from, volunteering or anything that you were doing on base, maybe you took up some responsibilities within the spouse community. Maybe you were a caregiver, right? So those all come with unique skills that you can list on your resume too, if you want to compensate for some of those gaps, if you have them. Before we jump in and kind of walk through the registration process, there was a question that came up that I kind of want to talk about through the chat box. I just saw it pop up a little bit ago on age, right? And age discrimination. Is there an impact or difference between, a 25-year-old candidate, a 50-year-old candidate? And if so, how do you go about, applying against a demographic that may be younger than you or older than you?
I responded, but I'll share more detail there. I had this conversation with a guy yesterday, and he'd been a physician assistant for 25 years. Physician assistants make a pretty decent amount of money, and he was looking to transition into cybersecurity and had been applying to jobs with years of experience commensurate to what he had as a physician assistant, and was trying to lateral over into that at the same compensation and years of experience, and was not willing to do the entry-level jobs at the entry-level job salary to get into cybersecurity. And, we had to have a heart-to-heart and say, hey, Mr. Physician Assistant, you want to do this. If this is really what you want to do, you can't expect to use your physician's assistant's years of experience at a director level cybersecurity role, because you know what? All the people below you have been doing this for 2 decades. They have all the knowledge and skills, and yeah, you passed the certification. That's great. I appreciate your effort, but you're going to have to be willing to do some of the legwork first. And it's the same with the military. You come out of the military, you come out and you're a 50-year-old. That means you did, 25 plus years of experience of service, and you start applying for jobs that are entry level because I'm humble. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to do this, but I'm going to need you to pay me like I have 25 years of experience at the CFO level. But I'm going to apply for a financial analyst role that budgeted at 45K. But I need you to pay me 125. And that's where it kind of gets into, it's ageism. No, it's unrealistic expectations on your part. And so you have to be honest with yourself and understand that compensation tied to a job is based on the job, not you. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of a factor there when you're really right there at those experience levels and you're checking all those boxes and you're like, hey, I am the subject matter expert in this. I will do this, but I need 5K higher than what you're offering. That makes sense. But when you're, 25 years of experience is in, say you're a Navy fighter pilot, and then you're trying to be the CTO, chief technology officer of a company. Yeah, you got the project management and the people skills, but you don't have any of those down trace technology experiences or anything like that. And it just doesn't make sense for you to transition directly into that type of role. You need to build those, those core competencies to be able to move up into those roles. And so it doesn't matter if you're 50, it doesn't matter if you're 25, it doesn't matter if you're 18. What matters is whether or not you are aligned to the job that you're applying for.
Yeah. And another thing to think about too, if it's something that personally, right, you feel uncomfortable with whenever you're applying to roles, you can always, you want to highlight your experiences, right? You want to showcase your, how much, you've learned in your past and how much you can bring to the table. But if you feel that it's, age might be a factor in a role, you can always remove the year from your education, right? If you do that, that tends to kind of take that bias out if it does exist. Not saying it does, but there, it could, right? There are employers out there, recruiters out there, everybody has their own personal bias. If it's something that you're concerned about, just remove the years from your education and you should be good. And then if you just stick with resume standards, which is your last, 15 to 20 years of employment, you should be good. Right? William, do you have anything to add in?
Absolutely. No, Michael summed it up very well. I mean, he took some of the words out of my mouth, actually. So,
right. All right. So I'm gonna just pop in and share my screen really quickly, and just kind of guide you guys through the registration process for the career fair. There are going to be some entry points on there where you can talk about your experience. You can highlight, your years of service, all while registering, and where you can upload your resume as well. So if you go to gijobs.com/expo, once you're on that page, you'll see all the details. We have 6 days, 20 hours, 24 minutes, and 55 seconds until the event begins. So that is how long you have to click that button. And so once we get that button clicked and we head in, you're going to see a login screen. And that login screen is going to allow you to log in via Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, or you can just go ahead and create your own login if you don't want to use the SSO. Just for time's sake, I'm going to click Google and accept the terms and conditions and keep it moving. And once we're inside, in here, you want to have a tagline, headline that just kind of sums up your skills, sums up the, maybe the job that you're looking for, address, your LinkedIn profile is important. If you have one, you want to include it. And then another thing to talk about on here are images. So, and even for LinkedIn too, right? It's kind of standard when we have those profile images to keep them professional, right? So no pictures of you and the dog or those kinds of things when you're putting these photos up there. So you just want to have a professional, nice, clean photo of yourself up there. And then your education level, the date and your availability, areas of expertise, and some other questions that you can respond to within here. If you do still hold a security clearance, I would include that. That is something that employers do look for. Well, some employers do look for, and they will train you to learn how to do the job, right? As long as you've got the clearance. And then you can upload your resume right up top just by selecting the file, and it'll be included right back in there. And then people like William and Michael can go in there and snoop on your resume before they meet you at the event. All right. So that, don't forget to get registered. And the event is happening on December 8th from 12 to 4. So mark your calendars and get excited. We've got a lot of employers joining us for the Military Friendly Career Fair. It's going to be super exciting and very, very engaging. So excited about that. Now I want to get back in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get back into some of the other questions that we have that have come up. All right, there we go. All right, so just to get some of your honest opinions here, right, and feedback when it comes to applications and resumes and the job application process to begin with, how important are cover letters? Because they take a really long time to make, and we just want to know if anyone actually reads those things.
No. It's like 4 additional screens, and sometimes I just don't see it.
So when an applicant comes into the system, that you can see the resume, but it takes some extra effort to go in and read the cover letter.
Yep.
What about you, William? Your thoughts? You're muted.
Muted.
Sorry about that. All right. So yeah, there's a lot of organizations out there that, you can't even submit the cover letter, but if there's an option, I mean, I recommend that you do include the cover letter, even if it isn't required, because that recruiter or hiring manager you're basically providing them more background on your skills and sort of what you can bring to the organization. So that gives you, that cover letter gives you that brief opportunity to really sell yourself and what you could bring to the table for the organization instead of just reading it off of, the actual resume itself. And it also shows, that you're serious about the opportunity that you're applying for. You sort of, took that extra effort and, wrote the cover letter instead of just doing, the actual resume itself. And another great tip, that I would recommend is also try to write a thank you note to the interviewer, usually within 24 hours, because then that really shows that you're going above and beyond and showing that extra initiative, for that position that you're applying for. And, it can be make or break for some individuals where, you can have 20 people that applied and you may only have one person that sent that thank you note.
Absolutely. That is great advice. I know, like in my past, when I was in the recruiting world, if someone wrote me a thank you note for an interview, it just made them stand out, and I would say that is probably more important than the cover letter. If you're going to, pick and choose what you're going to do. It really, really sets you apart, even if it's just an email or, I sometimes I've even received like handwritten notes, which is kind of cool. But they take a little longer to come in than an email. But great advice, guys. So I guess the cover letter is really just personal preference. Maybe have a standardized format one that you use that highlights your strongest skills and strengths, and just kind of use that because it does sit in a separate section of the system when recruiters are in there. And it may be something that a hiring manager looks at. So if you've got one, include it, but more importantly, follow up and say thank you after the interview. I think that is great advice.
I will say, if you do that and you do like a canned one, kind of like the resume piece, if it says the wrong company on it, you're more than likely getting rejected. Especially if the role is requiring attention to detail and you're just mass blasting cover letters and resumes out there that all say the same thing, and you've applied to 4 jobs and they all have the same resume and cover letter on them, it's not really helping you. So yeah, that's my only piece. That's why sometimes I don't read them, because I don't want to have a bias against them of like, hey, there's 72 errors in here, or it's just a text doc that says, I really want this job. Like, come on, your resume was killer and you sent that, and it's like a screenshot of like a notes section of your phone. That kills me. That also kills me on if your resume is a screenshot. No, that's bad.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
That's real bad. No.
I'm shocked that made it through the system, because it would be an image, right?
Yeah, you have to click to download it, and like on those, I'm like, I wonder what this is. I have to just download it just to see, because generally those are fun. Or like people upload the wrong documents all the time. Make sure you have a correct naming convention on your resume and cover letters so that and you track what you're sending and where you're sending, and then you send the right thing. And always send it as a PDF, not as a Word doc.
Yep. And then you can too get a little creative with the cover letter, right? If you're not comfortable sending the cover letter because you've got to change out the title every time the company you're applying to, do a bio, right? Do something creative. Do an experiential bio, a volunteer bio, a community outreach bio, just things that you've done, that shows how you go above and beyond and how you can be a unique asset to the organization you're applying to. And that's really what the purpose of the cover letter is, right? And however you want to do that, as long as it's not a screenshot from your phone that Michael would download for fun, just to look at, I think you're in good shape, right? And so when we talk about military-friendly companies and leveraging internal and external partnerships, and talking about those volunteer, bios that you can include, what are some of the organizations that you guys have worked with or seen other military-friendly employers work with that can help ease the recruiting process, where you can connect with individuals outside of maybe your current recruiting efforts, and where you've kind of posted some really good talent?
Yeah, I am really close friends with the leadership at Still Serving Veterans, which is out of Huntsville, Alabama, that has a national virtual recruiting team for service members. They actually physically send out a person to transition events at, whether it be at Hood or Air Force bases or Navy bases or whatever, and help you transition into companies. And they are a free nonprofit service. They get funding through grants, such as like the Call of Duty Foundation pays them a lot of money to do this, and they go out and they just provide additional resources that are connected to the community. And their team sends me people, and they're like, hey, Michael, I saw on your LinkedIn that you're looking for a XYZ financial analyst. I have this person coming out of the Army. They've been in 5 years. They've got a bachelor's degree in finance. They've been a finance officer or finance enlisted person for the last 5 years. I think they'd be a great fit. And I talked to them. The other organization is American Freedom Foundation. So it was founded by Ted Hacker and former Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack Tilley. And so what they do is they host career events and different experiential events across the United States at major association, trade shows. So Association United States Army, Air Force Sergeants Association, Houston, or in Huntsville, the Rocket Association, they have a big event there. But it's just different. It's a nonprofit that helps veterans connect to employers. So that one, they always have good events. And Ted and I co-hosted an event here in Nashville called LinkedIn Music City, kind of mirrored off the LinkedIn Mill City that Ray and Samantha and that team in San Antonio started hosting. And so we just partner with them and try and get our name out there and get their name out there and give an avenue for a veteran. Even if I can't hire you, I try to take, 10, 15, 20 minutes to have a conversation and say, hey, this is where your resume looks really bad, but this is where it looks good. And this is what I would do, or this is how I would articulate your skills and experiences, or this is how I'd look for a job different than what you're doing. Whatever that looks like, those are just regional nonprofits are super helpful. We actually had our ERG meeting right before this, and I put out a call of, hey, what nonprofits are you working with locally, and how can I connect with them to send them, an update on our hot jobs. And so just really any nonprofit is super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about that too, from a networking perspective, you can leverage as many, and do it, right? As many military job boards or resources that are available out there. GI Jobs has a great one on our website, but it's also very, very important and crucial to reach out to these VSOs, and ask for some help, because they've got great networks, and there's a lot of them out there, and there's like 52,000, right? So just do a little bit of research, and ask around. Don't be afraid to just kind of send a LinkedIn message to someone and say, hey, just trying to vet some of these organizations that are in my area, or even nationally, just to kind of figure out which one might be the best fit. William, what kind of nonprofits do you guys work with, or have you seen other military friendly companies work with?
Yeah, so we work with a variety of, different organizations and nonprofits. A lot of the big ones that are, more regional, Department of Labor, specifically Department of Labor vets on sort of both sides, the veteran side as well as the military spouse side. For military spouses, we partner with Military Spouse Employment Partnership. So they have a really good network to reach out to all of the military spouses, and we can, post jobs on their job board, and really, do our reporting as well to Military Spouse Employment Partnership, with sort of our numbers of, the number of military spouses that we are hiring. On the active duty side, we partner with Army Pays. They're still in active duty, most of these individuals. So utilizing the Army Pays guarantees them an interview with us. So that sort of helps them even before they transition out of the military to really get an interview within, the civilian workforce. Also, hiring our heroes, utilizing the Skill Bridge program as well as corporate fellowship program. Those are two really big programs with, a lot of backing. And most recently, USO launched the Uso Pathfinder program. So they help service members and military spouses from really beginning to end, tailoring the resume, helping them any way possible, and, pushing, once they're completed, then they can actually go to the organization with that, resume that they've helped them with, the interview prep, and they're fully ready to go.
Yeah, those are all wonderful resources and great organizations. Duo Vets does a ton. MSEP is a remarkable program. They've got a lot of moving parts, a lot of resources. Everyone, the USO is exciting to see, right? They've got a lot of moving parts, and the fact that they go from beginning to end, right? It's just kind of catching your groove and figuring out which of these, organizations can be the best ladder for you, right? You want to couple that with your other initiatives, such as using and leveraging job boards, using and leveraging resources, doing your research, right? So partnering those two things together can really help lead you down the path of success, in addition to networking, right? Networking is super important.
And how easy they are to work with helps.
Yes.
Because there's work for Warriors is a great program. They're super labor intensive to send them information. And so that makes it harder for us as an employer to work with them. So the easier they are to work with, the easier it is to work with them.
Absolutely. And, when we talk about that, there's also two additional programs. Let's say you already are in the workforce, right? And you don't need the beginning to end handhold, or you want to get that promotion or advancement rate, or maybe, you're just not happy in your current position, but you like your company, right? There are resources and tools that you can leverage out there to expand on the skills that you currently have, right? Like programs one through IVMF, right? O2O, where they will get you trained in certification programs to excel your career path. So you can stay with the company that you're at, but obtain the job that you want, right? If you don't want to go through the career search process. So those are all great resources. and very good intel and information. So thank you for that, guys. I know we talked prior about the BRG, ERG groups. Is there anything you guys want to add or touch on when it comes to the BRG, ERGs? How does someone, we talked about LinkedIn, but is there ways that people can find the ERG, BRG? Is it on the website? Like, how do we find those people?
Yeah, it's going to be on people's LinkedIn profile, most likely. Here in Nashville, we have an organization called Veterans Corporate Council, and it is literally something that I helped put together a couple of years ago to bring together those ERGs to share best practices. There's also ERG organizations out there that share them. You can do some reverse engineering and figure out who is in those by who follows those types of organizations. Search down, say, hey, everybody with select Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines follows this organization, and then you can sort it out that way and look at the different companies that they're in and then connect with them that way. You can just search employee resource group or business resource group. That's what that stands for, Dolores. Different things like that is ways to reverse engineer the search of these individuals. And then you can just ask, like, if this person is a military veteran and they're at XYZ company, say Deloitte or Premise Health or whatever, and reach out and say, hey, are you a member of the employee resource group? If not, who can I connect with? Because some people choose not to be. It's sometimes very labor and time intensive. And if they're working on a major project, they might have to step back and step away, but they can point you in the right direction because they're probably getting 10 emails from Michael a month.
That's great advice. And when we look at some of the internal programs from military-friendly companies, we find that, I think it's around 87% have identified that the retention rates within their organizations, because they have these programs, are higher for their veterans and military spouses. And so when you're searching for an employer or looking at, for the right employer to marry or to get into a relationship with, right? It's important to look at all of the things that they bring to the table, right? And all the things that you bring to the table too. And so if a company doesn't exactly match the, salary amount you desire or the number amount, there may be other benefits that they offer, such as, tuition reimbursement, such as training reimbursement, such as extra paid time off. So can you guys talk a little bit more about some of those extended benefits that companies and military-friendly programs offer to their employees? Whoever wants to take it, hop in.
Well,
yeah, both. Sure, yeah. So, for us, as far as like mentorship programs go, that's something we offer, for all of our salespeople that are in the field. We have a comprehensive program. It's basically a 6-month-long mentorship program. So literally, as soon as they get hired, we're sort of guiding them from day one all the way through to give them all of the tools and resources that they need to be successful. And we offer that, through some of our, through our BRT group as well. That's called Salute. So we have the way we communicate that too, all of the mentorship opportunities that are available, all the volunteer opportunities that are available. We create our own sort of internal, which is called the Village for us. And we're able to actually utilize that, and anyone could, post articles, if it's military related or events. So we can all literally share with one another, not just at the meeting, but also, if you come across something, like you said, Michael, if you got there's plenty of people have a huge project or something, they see something that they might be interested in, they could go ahead and just post that to that Village page. And now we can see that and get everyone involved that needs to or has the opportunity to volunteer their time to make sure that, somebody can attend this event. And this way it's not just sort of, put on the back burner.
Michael, what's your take on mentorship and sponsorship programs?
Yeah, I think you need 3 things. You need a mentor, you need a sponsor, and you need a coach, because all 3 of those people are different. They provide you something different. And you can find that in an ERG, BRG. And something else that we've kind of been working on is we're the established ERG in our organization, and we're adding 9 new ones for 2021 and 2022. And we're trying to help talk about intersectionality and you can be a veteran and this, you can be a veteran and that, and trying to help take the knowledge and skills and experiences that we have and we've built and developed over the last couple of years and share them with different groups to help them build those skills and experiences. And so that's going to be a big push for us for 2022 on the veteran side is making sure that we pay it forward, not just inside of our own veteran community, but across our whole organization. And it gives people the opportunity to really share what they have going on, how they can be helpful, how they can support each other. And then it gets, those internal teams, the veterans, the military spouses, interconnected more with different teams that maybe they wouldn't have had a chance to connect with. Well, you talked about your sales team and sales mentoring. We have sales and sales teams, and maybe they're not talking to the IT team, but maybe it would make sense that those two collaborated more in just a networking capacity. And these are the type of events and opportunities, whether digital or in person, that they can do that. And that's what we're trying to focus on in 2022.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And
that's sort of what we utilize as well. Really, not just making it just about Salute BRT group, but also reaching out to other BRTs throughout the whole organization to, come and do whatever it may be, a webinar. Our Veterans Day event was not just hosted by Salute, but we also included another BRT group, which was Impact. And so we came together to really, invite everyone. So not only is Salute just spreading the word, we're also reaching out to other, diversity and inclusion BRT groups, and so they could spread the word for us as well.
Yeah, keyword diversity and inclusion, right? So if you are internally needing to diversify and internally needing to include, when you as a job seeker are looking out for those mentorships, sponsorships, and coaching opportunities, diversify, right? Don't try and find all three of those individuals in Michael, even though Michael will raise his hand to do it, right? So you want to make sure that you look around and you ask around it, and you can leverage organizations like ACP, for example, right? American Corporate Partners, or Veterati, or your Veteran Mentor Network on LinkedIn. They're all great resources to just kind of tap into and say, I'm looking for a mentor, or just look to see if someone's posting, does anyone need a mentor, right? And so I think there's a lot of insight and a lot of positive things that can come from those sorts of relationships and networking opportunities. When it comes to retention within your organizations, are there certain things that you guys do to retain your service members, to prevent them from leaving if maybe they, found another opportunity, and maybe other things too that you've seen out while networking with other employers that you're like, hey, that's a great idea? What are some of those things that companies do?
Will, you want to jump on this one first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
So,
don't fight for it, guys. No need to get violent.
Retention is huge. Putting my National Guard hat on, like, retention is one of the big factors that our state general is in charge, is putting in the charge of the commanders. And I kind of bring those methodologies with me into premise and just asking, hey, what are your goals? And having those honest conversations and how can I connect you to the right dots internally is how we can, engage and empathize and communicate to those team members that show they are valued. And maybe the timeline is not as quick, the runway is a little bit longer than they expected on a promotion or a career change or transition from different departments. But honestly, if you're not asking, you don't know. And I can tell you the amount of people that I hit up on LinkedIn every day of like, hey, are you interested in changing jobs? It's a lot. And, somebody is going to be asking them. I spent a long time, in sales, and the old adage is, if you haven't talked to your customer today, 3 competitors have. It's the same for employees. If you haven't talked to your team today, somebody else has. And make sure that you're engaging them, you're empathizing with them, you care. Show them that you care, and they'll stay. They'll fight with you in the trenches.
Super important to have organizations that care. William, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just really, showing that you care and keeping with them and keeping them engaged. With any kind of opportunity that you may have, bringing them maybe onto a project, to, show like, oh, here, I want to get your opinion on something, and bring them into, a project that they normally might not be on to keep them busy. but also giving them volunteer opportunities outside of work, something that they're passionate about, ask them and try to find those opportunities for them and connect them with, a business resource group that may, fit what they're really about sort of outside of work, and that they're passionate about doing sort of, every day.
You know what, guys, you have been a tremendous wealth of knowledge and have provided so much great information and insight. And I want to thank you for joining us today. I think we've actually gone right up to time. Unfortunately, I could sit here and talk about this stuff forever, right? But Michael would probably try and toss me over a bridge, and William would then run me over with a car. So let you guys get back to work and for our audience to get back to their day. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today on this call. We hope that you were able to get some insight from our speakers today, and that you got some valuable, tips, tricks, and were able to take something out of this. Keep in mind, the December 8th is the event, so you want to go ahead and get registered at gijobs.com/expo. You can also download the list of military-friendly employers, which is available at gijobs.com, or just through the app. You can download the app and you get the DigiMag right there. So if you can go to the App Store, download GI Jobs app, you'll have that information available as well. Thank you guys all so much for today. It was an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to doing this again.
Thank you all very much. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.